It's a delight to be here today. As Harsha mentioned, I have the honor of being kind of a founding member of the board of Indo US Rare. So I've been with it since Harsha founded the organization. Harsha is my neighbor and my friend. And Harsha shares the same family story that I have, and that his family too was affected by a rare serious disease, as is mine. And so we have this common bond. And I think it's almost a common bond that throughout my 40 years of working on rare diseases, from my time at FDA when I helped implement the Orphan Drug Act way back in 1983, hardly seems possible. But when I helped to implement the Orphan Drug Act back then, I could not imagine the impact it would have both in the United States and around the globe. I have to say that, when Dr. Ferdinand Sauer started the EMA in late January 95, he invited me to come join him in London in early February 1995 so that he could tap into what our experience had been with rare diseases in the United States, so that he could model that in the Europe space, which was successful here, and also avoid things that we thought were a mistake. For instance, one of the things I told him was, we set a threshold of 200,000 people, but as our population keeps expanding, it becomes ever more rare to be a rare disease. So I said, don't do that. Set it up as a ratio, as a number, and that's what they've done in Europe. So I've seen this expand from first the United States, then into Europe, and now across the globe. And the only way that we are going to be able to tackle rare diseases is if we come together as a community across the globe. And so that's why I was thrilled when Harsha reached out to me to join Indo US Rare, quickly to say yes, and to commit to try to do everything we could to try to bring those in the Indian population as well as in the Indian diaspora, into the rare disease community. To give you an example, when my good friend Ted Love at Global Blood was developing a drug for sickle cell, when we did that and helped get a drug, Oxbrita, approved for sickle cell, as Rena mentioned, we don't think of sickle cell as being something that can affect the hundreds of millions in India. And yet it's true. And so we have kind of underappreciated the value of the community that's out there across the globe. And so to bring us all together, first with things like registries and then to try to involve in clinical trials, will be a huge advance. Maybe in the second 40 years, I won't be here to the end of that second 40 years, but in the first 40 years, I can project that the next 40 years, if we can come together as a global community, then we will try to see things that will be much better. I'll give you an example. One drug I'm working on now is a drug to try to help on venomous snake mites, because and I think half of the enrollees we have in the pivotal registration trial are in India. So that's a good case of where we are trying to and succeeding and involving those around the globe, including in India. So with that as kind of a background, just bringing in a little bit of historical perspective to our gathering here today and why I think it's so important that we are gathering. I'm so pleased to introduce our keynote speaker this morning, Dr. Peter Marks. Dr. Marks, he'd probably blush when I say things about him like, everybody in the country knows Tony Fauci's name because of Tony Fauci's efforts with the White House at trying to get us through the COVID epidemic. But it was really those who know the FDA. No, it's the people at the FDA, the boots on the ground, that actually get the work done. There are people in the White House who obviously are more press worthy, and so they get the prominence in terms of press coverage. But we know it's the people on the ground at the FDA that actually make the difference. And it was Peter Marks's genius and creativity that led to Operation Warp Speed, which said, we have a global crisis. We cannot do business as usual. We have to change. We have to tell the people at Pfizer, the people at Moderna, the people at Novavax, we have to tell them we are available 24/7. 7 days a week. That was Peter Marks. And can you imagine? I mean, the world kind of views people who give their time and service to the federal government as people who punch a clock. And here they are. They're saying, not us. We're here Saturdays and Sundays. You call at midnight, we'll answer the phone. And that cut 6 to 9 months, at least. That's the conservative estimate of how long it took for us to get shots in our arms and to be able to go back to gatherings like this and being together again. And how many lives were saved because of Peter's genius. And so that genius that Peter has is seen even today in rare diseases. I'm just going to pivot and talk about, I helped get the first drug approved for Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, eteplirsen, a long time ago. But Peter Marks approved the most recent innovative therapy for Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, which was a gene therapy. And Peter saw that the data there warranted an approval, despite there being some people on his staff who had a difference of opinion. And so Peter was able to piece together scientifically the evidence to be able to grant an approval for the first gene therapy. And what happens when people like Peter see the ability to work through the regulatory system and see the science that enables the delivery to our, in this case, brothers with Duchenne's muscular dystrophy? It propels the whole field. So it will propel the next generation of gene therapies for DMD. It will propel all gene therapies for all rare diseases, because Peter had the wisdom and the experience to be able to give that kind of approval. So with that kind of as a short introduction to my good friend Peter Marks, I'd like to invite Peter to come here and give us his keynote address this morning. Thank you, Peter.